So, hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am Sarpat Kumar. I am a front-end engineer with overall 3.8 years of experience, approx 4 years, right? So, yeah, the people I'm going to target here is who is totally new to front-end and wants to explore front-end and who likes front-end engineering but have some things going on in their mind, like is this front-end is just about writing HTML, CSS and JavaScript and nothing else, or people say that backend is a lot more better and exciting than front-end, as front-end we do nothing but just take the data and render it to the user, right? So we are going to break all of these myths. Okay, so with this whole session, with this whole playlist I'm going to provide you, with this we are going to know how front end is as important as back end and we should not take it lightly, and we'll also see, is it just about HTML and CSS, JavaScript? Is it just about changing the color of a button, or it is more than that, right? So we'll see all about that. So let's get started, right? Okay, so this was all about the introduction. The agenda of today is I'm just going to in today's session I'm just going to walk you through the concept of web, like leave front end, leave back end. Let's try to understand how web works as a whole. So how was it before, how is it now, right? How internet takes a role in this, right? How we see all these websites. When we go to browser and type some URL, we get some websites, right? So how do we get these websites? What's the process behind that, right? So we'll see all about that in today's session. Okay, so yeah, so let's get started. So let's try to understand how internet works, right? So let me take you through a few images. So I have a lot of images over here, right? So internet, simple, right? We use a lot of devices. We use laptops, we use desktops, we use mobile phones, tablets, iPads, smartwatches, etc., right? Inside all of these devices, we either make use of apps like WhatsApp, Facebook. So if you are streaming right now, so if you are viewing my channel through YouTube, you must be using either a YouTube app or you must have been running YouTube in your browser, right? So whenever we hit some URL or we load some app, that is going to be connected to internet, and through internet, via internet, is going to make some request to the server, and server is going to send back to the response, and when the response is sent, the responses get loaded to our screen, right? Simple. That's how internet works. Yeah, on a high level it looks very simple, but it's not. So let me take you through one more image to get a detailed understanding of how internet works, right? So okay, now we see that in the previous image we saw that it is just internet, devices and server, but here we see some intermediate devices here, something called as internet service provider, domain name server. So something happening between ISP and domain name server, and then this ISP sending request to internet to some server here. So let's try to understand what's happening here, right? So I am a user, right? I want to access johnswidgets.com. Alright, so you might be connected to a Wi-Fi if you are using laptops or desktops or mobile hotspot, or if you are using mobile, you must be using internet with mobile data, or again like in mobile as well, you must be connected to a Wi-Fi. So these Wi-Fi guys and the same cards your mobile phones have, which provides the data. So you might be doing data recharge to your mobile phones. So you must be having different SIMs like Airtel, BSNL, Jio, right? And if you are using Wi-Fi, again there are a lot of providers like ACT, Hathway, again Airtel, Jio, BSNL. These all guys provide internet through Wi-Fi's or through the SIM cards, right? So if you are using SIM cards, the data must be coming from some tower. So again, like how the tower gets the internet through these ISPs. So these Airtel, Jio, BSNL, all of these guys are called as ISPs. ISPs in the sense internet service provider, right? So we get internet from these ISPs. Okay. Now, whenever we make a request, for example, I make a request to google.com or google.co.in, to be specific, I'm in India, so google.co.in. So if I make a request to google.co.in, it goes to this ISP. Okay, so these ISPs again are nothing but Airtel, Jio, BSNL, etc, right? So this ISP, let's for a second forget about the domain name server part. Okay, so let's concentrate on ISP. So this ISP from internet, it sends the request to the server via the internet, and then server responds back to the ISP, and then this ISP gives you the response, right? Now let's say we have entered this johnwidgets.com in our URL bar. Now based on that URL, how our ISP will know to which server the request is supposed to be sent, right? So for that, what it does is it sends the URL to another server called as domain name server. So this domain name server, right, it has all the addresses of web servers mapped to these domain names. So we call this www.google.com, it is a domain name. johnwidgets.com is a domain name. facebook.com is a domain name. So all of these domain names are mapped to some address like this 72.26.1.1.160. So this is one address. So there are many addresses like this. Our domain names are mapped to the addresses like this. This is called as an IP address. So this is nothing but it is the address to the web server. So it is as similar as finding a home of our friend. So let's say our friend is living in XYZ city, right, and we want to go to his home. So what we do, we ask him for his home's address. So if we have home's address, we can reach to his home. Similarly, if we have this IP address, this domain names, this ISP can reach to the server with this IP address. So this is the address to the server, right? So what this ISP does, it takes our URL and then passes it to domain name server, and then domain name server sends back the actual address, which is something like this, and then this using this address, it sends the request to the appropriate server, right? And then server sends back the response to ISP, and then ISP gives the response back to the user. Okay. Now we have understood that how internet works in a little bit deeper manner. So let's try to understand how this domain name server works, right? So let's say this is our ISP. Okay, so this is requesting for example.com. okay, so this example.com, this DNS server takes the example.com. okay, and in this DNS server uses multiple servers again to fetch single ISP. So let's see why. let's say we are calling for www.example.com, right? So initially it asks the root server. So there is something called as root server. It asks the root server for the IP address for www.example.com. Now the root server says, say buddy, I don't have the IP address of www.example.com, but I can give you the address of another server where all the addresses ending with .com are stored, right? Then okay, it gives the address of that server. It comes here. So this TLD server now has all the websites URLs which ends with .com. Okay, so now here this TLD server, this DNS server asks TLD server to give the IP address of www.example.com. Now the TLD server says, again, see buddy, I don't have the IP address of www.example.com, but I can give you the address of a server which has the URL example.com, right? Again, like it sends the address of that server. Again, this DNS calls this server, makes the request to this server asking for www.example.com's IP address, and then this says, yeah, you are at the right place. I have the address for this URL, take it here it is, and then it sends back to the DNS. So through DNS, from DNS it goes to our ISP again. From ISP it goes to server. The request goes to server, web server, right? So this part, so this whole process of DNS looking for our IP address, we call it as DNS lookup. It uses recursive strategy to look up for our IP address, right? Now we know how this domain name server internally works and goes through each internal servers and fetches our IP address, right? How it makes the recursive calls to do the DNS lookup, correct? Now, so this is all about internet, right? And okay, so there is more to it actually, so this is just a simple image which includes one ISP and then a server through, the request is sent to server just through one ISP. That is not going to be the case in real time. There are going to be lot of ISPs connected in between, and through all of these ISPs the request passes through all of these ISP to the server. Okay, so that is how the data passes, request passes through all of the ISPs. But why, right? Why is that? Let's take the example of Netflix, right? So let's say you are sitting in India, and then you're trying to stream or binge watch any of the series in Netflix, right? And so let's say you have some friends in US or UK or in some other country. They recommend you a series which is very good and it is top of the town at their place, and they recommend you to watch that series, and you are sitting in India and try to access that series in Netflix, but you are not able to access it because that series is restricted in your country. You cannot watch that series in country. Why? Because government has set some rules to what videos the users of the particular country can see, right? So these rules are applied to ISPs. Okay, so then ISP, so the government officials provide these rules to ISPs. These ISPs apply rules on the response end, and the request is being made. Whenever request is being made or response is being sent back to these ISPs apply these rules on the responses before sending it to the client, right? That is why these ISPs are used. And not just this, there is another advantage of it. So do you think every time a request is made, does it go through ISPs to server and comes back to ISPs to client again? No, because server is sitting somewhere far from us, like probably 10,000 of kilometers away, right? Now, just to you know get a simple data, every time a request is made, the request is not going from each ISP to server each time. So let's say if we are calling a website multiple times, right? So if we are making a call to website frequently, these ISPs, what they do is they are smart. They keep the response in their cache memory. Okay. So next time whenever you make a request to some URL, these ISPs check like if that the response for that URL is already present in their cache. So if it is present in their cache, then they'll return it from there. Okay, not just ISPs. So if you are using Wi-Fi, so we have Wi-Fi routers. So our request passes through Wi-Fi, our Wi-Fi to routers, then to ISP, right? So there are smart routers which keep the content in their memory. So those routers check like if the URL is being hit, if this URL's content is already present in their router. So if it is present in their router, they return it from there. They do not have to go till ISP and till the server, right? That is how so we see the extremely fast loading of the content, right? So we just hit something and within milliseconds we see the content in front of our eyes. So that is why these ISPs, routers, all of these are used, right? So yeah, this is all about internet, how internet works. So we have client, we have a server, in between we have ISPs. ISPs will have some rules set into them, right? Now there is one more thing to it. Let me show it to you. Let's try to understand, like we just said that servers, they are going to be far away from us, like at least 10,000, 10, 15,000 kilometers away, right? So how now we see that this response we get is extremely fast. How are we able to get the response that fast, even though the server is located some far away, right? So initially what used to happen was whenever the request was made, the request from ISPs used to go to satellite, right? And through satellites and through it used to pass our regional station and to satellite, and then to their regional station, and then from their regional station to the server. That is how the data used to pass, or request used to pass, and the response as well used to come through the same way. But this had some disadvantage, right? It was not a joke to send a request through satellites, which is again like hundreds of kilometers away, from hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from the place where we live, through vertically, right? So there were problems like if there was some weather condition, there was bad climate, or for some other reason if the satellite working stopped, so all the internet would stop. If there is if some fault happens to satellite, the whole internet working would stop. So to overcome this, what they did was, now we have optical fibers. This whole our whole ISPs, every ISP and every ISPs in the world are connected to servers using these optical cables. So they are extremely fast. They are almost, the speed of them is almost equal to the speed of light. They pass the data inside them within the speed of light, right? So now how are they connected? How the servers and clients and these ISPs are connected, right? So are they connected through roadways? Obviously not. Like, we do not have roadways of all the words connected with each other, right? So they take the path of the water, right? So they go through seas, and then so they are installed inside these oceans, and then they travel through oceans and then to the local regions, and then we must have seen in our local that there is lot of this digging is done after the roads are made, so that they put some cable. These are cables, these are the optical cables to connect to the ISPs. So they take the underground path and they get connected to the ISPs. So that is how the connection happens, and they are so fast that they almost travel at the speed of light. So the request and responses we send travel at the speed of light. So that is how the communication happens between ISPs and servers and the clients, right? So this is about internet. I think now you guys have a lot of idea about how internet works. So yeah, thanks everyone. So this is about it in this session. Thanks for going through this session. Yeah, if you like this, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Right, so I'll be coming up with a lot more good content, and in the upcoming sessions we are going to see how browser loads the data that comes from the response. Right, so far we have seen that how request is sent and how response comes back, and what will happens in between the ISPs, the satellites, the underground. So we saw all of that. Okay, in the coming sessions we are going to see what actually happens inside the browser to render these beautiful websites, right? So we'll see that in the next session. Until then, bye bye, take care.